Hey guys, welcome to the behind the scenes recording of the Akashic podcast. I don't even know what podcast number are we on. Do you know?
I don't even know. We're in the teens. I know that. We're in the
We've
teens.
matured.
Yes, we're going through adolescence right now.
Yeah. maybe we're preteens. I think we may be preteens. I think we may be just starting to hit puberty.
Are we?
And
okay.
Things are getting uncomfortable and awkward. So anyways, welcome everyone to the behind the scenes recording of the Akashic podcast. And, our mission at the Akashic Academy is to bring spiritual practices together, unifying our search for God, for Christ consciousness, for Krishna consciousness, for Buddhahood, for yoga consciousness, for whatever other names that you got to give it, whatever you call it. It's funny, I've been listening to a lot of Stuart Wilde lately. If you're not familiar with Stuart Wilde, he's a fantastic teacher. I've been diving into all his stuff. He's a very funny guy too. He had the opportunity to be a comedian, but he decided to go down the spiritual path and to become a spiritual teacher and enlighten us with his knowledge. And he's very funny. One of the audios and trainings I'm listening to right now is all about the Tao. And, he's funny. He's like, you can call it whatever you want, Swami, Jami, Mommy, or whatever he says. He's a pretty funny guy. So I like his style and his vibe. So, hey, Susan Miller says, good morning. What's happening, Susan? Morning. So, by the way, if you're joining us right now, give us some likes. Hit that like button, hit that love button, send some of those love bubbles and like bubbles across the screen. We always love those. And feel free to hit that share button as well, because we're going to have an interesting conversation today. We're going to be we're taking a Bible verse, actually, right out of Corinthians. And now I'm going, what Bible verse are we doing here?
Oh, ruh-roh.
So hold on.
It's the love
close
verse.
That page. It is. I was. It's funny because in the movie The Wedding Crashers, so if you're familiar with the movie The Wedding Crashers, there is there's kind of a joke. There's a part in where they're crashing this wedding, and they're in the church, and they have a bet. The two actors are Owen Wilson, I believe.
Is it Adam Sandler?
No, Vince Vaughn. Vaughn and I believe Owen Wilson, I think. And so they're in the church, and the bridesmaids going up to give a speech, and they have a bet, and the bet is which speech they're going to give, and it's always like one or the other. And this is the one anyway. So Owen Wilson says $100 or $50, it's going to be this verse, and she comes out and she's like, so reading from chapter 1 of Corinthians, blah 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 blah, and it was this verse. So just so you know, so we've got some people joining us. Say what's up, say hello. Let me get to some of the comments. Some people saying good morning to us. So appreciate it. So Jerry says good morning. Susan Miller said good morning. Beth says, hey guys, good morning. What's happening, Beth? Nice to connect with you this morning. All right, so we're going to get started here shortly. So just so you understand how this works, so what you're watching is the behind the scenes of us recording our podcast. We've got our other devices kind of off to the side here, which we're actually recording on. So when we do get started, we're going to chat for about half an hour on this Bible verse, and we're going to give our take, and me and Emily are going to have a discussion over it, and then we're going to stop the recording. And then when we stop the recording, then we're going to come back and answer your questions and your comments and your thoughts. So throughout the conversation, leave your questions, comments, and thoughts, and definitely participate. But we do see it. We'll flash the comments up on the screen, but we may not acknowledge it. Well, we won't acknowledge it throughout the recording of the podcast, because it won't make sense for our podcast listeners. But then we'll come back and we'll read the comments and questions as best as we can as we go throughout the show. So that's how it's going to go. So I believe it's, am I saying this right? Laika?
Yes, that's Laika? Elmer. I call her Elmer.
Awesome, Elmer. So Elmer says no sounds. I don't know what that means. Does that mean you can't hear us?
How about everybody?
Can everybody else hear us? Say yes if you can hear us. Can you hear us? Annie, thank you, Annie. And he says, we hear you. Beth says, no video. Oh, so some people have no video, some people have no sound. Say yes. Jerry says, I hear you fine. Do you see us? Let us know if you can see us okay. Make sure we got the technology piece running. Person needs to leave and come back. All right, so a little bit of instructions there. So if you're having a problem with the sound or the visual, leave or refresh your page and see if that helps to make the broadcast come through clearer for you. We're going to give it just a few more minutes, then we're going to get started. Once again, we're going to find I'm just going to find the verse here. So Emily, you know how we normally start. I'm going to give our intro, and then I'm going to bring us in. And then what I'll do is I'll read the verse out, and then we'll get started on the discussion.
Roger and copy.
Roger and copy. Cool. Susan Miller says, I hear and see you. Fantastic. Well, good, Susan. And we're good to go. All right, cool. I think we're good to get started. So once again, I'll just give this instructions quickly for those of you who just joined us. What you're watching is the behind the scenes recording of our podcast. So we're going to get started here shortly. Available on iTunes. Awesome. So yeah, definitely go on iTunes to check out some of our other podcasts. Very, very interesting conversations. Last week was all about gender roles and spiritual growth. So the role men and women play in society and how it's interacting and you know, the roles that we play and quality and how this is affecting or how it's developing in our own progress and evolution. So very interesting discussion there. Lots of opinions and lots of different ideas around that. So as Susan Miller says, my hummingbirds are buzzing in my head. Awesome, fantastic. All right, so what we're going to do is, does anyone see my comments? We see your comments, Beth.
We see you, Beth.
Yeah, we see you. So once again, we're going to press record here soon. Me and Emily are going to chat for about half an hour. You guys leave your comments, join in the discussion. And then, of course, when the recording is over of the podcast, then we're going to come back and we're going to read and engage with some of those comments. So definitely participate. Cynthia Munn says, morning. Hey, Cynthia. Nice to see you. Good morning. And Heidi says, I can see and hear you in Norway. What? Norway. Awesome. Cool. Hey, by the way, let us know where you're from. Yeah, I love that. I love knowing where everybody's from. This is a global community of people who are seeking and studying and bringing their knowledge and energy to the table. Absolutely love it. Beth says, I'm good now. Fantastic.
Cool. Hey, Nick.
And Jean
comments. Who was talking about the hummingbirds? Hi, Jean.
That was Susan Miller.
Susan, I wanted to share that when the hummingbirds come and they're flying by like that, that vibration of the actually structuring some of the grid work inside of your mind, inside of your own energy field, really upgrading you, getting you ready to receive like higher frequency information. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. You've got the frequency setters flying around you today. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's real cool. Awesome. So Jean says New Jersey, I believe that is, and Beth is from Wisconsin. I can't help but think of that 70s show when I think about Wisconsin.
That's funny.
All right, cool. So Emily, it's 10 after. I think we should rock and roll and let's do this podcast.
Okay.
So let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready. And 3, 2, 1, record.
Welcome to the Akashic Podcast. This week, we're going to be discussing a Bible verse from Corinthians. Hey, are you someone who has read the Bible, studied the Bible? Maybe you hate the Bible, maybe you love the Bible. Wherever you're at, there's no doubt, or it's hard to say that there's not great wisdom within the Bible. So this week, we are going to dive into one of the most famous Bible verses, and we are going to discuss it and bring our different perspectives and the perspective from the Akashic into this Bible verse. So what's the Bible verse we're going to be diving into? We're going to be diving into 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 to 8. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. All right, fantastic. So that's one of the most famous Bible verses out there, and it's read a lot at weddings, right? Because it's all about love and what love is. And so we're going to dive into this a little bit further. So I'd like to welcome the founder of the Akashic Academy, Miss Emily Harrison. How's it going today, Emily? What are your thoughts on that verse?
I'm good, Coach Nick. Just hearing you read that verse, the vibration carried in those words floods my spirit in a totally different way from where I'm at my point in my life now than when I was a kid. And I've shared before that I grew up all up in that Southern Baptist church, man. I was a church girl. I was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday. I was going to church camp. My mama was a Sunday school teacher. The preacher's wife gave me piano lessons. Like, we were immersed in the church and in Bible verses. And it had a certain meaning to me at that point in time. I mean, I was going along with what my family did, and I enjoyed being in the presence of spirit. But religion wasn't something that necessarily stuck with me as I went out on my own and I grew into the woman that I am now. And to have gone on the spiritual path that I've gone on, and then to come back around and to revisit some of those verses, specifically this one that we're revisiting today, this 1 Corinthians, it has a different meaning. It has more depth to it. So I'm really excited to discuss this. How about you? What's your experience been since you first read the Bible and you first came into contact with these things, and where you're at now?
Yeah, sure. So similar to you, I wouldn't say that I was so involved with the church, but I did grow up in Catholic school. And, part of Catholic school was religion class and going through the motions of being confirmed and reconciliation and baptism and all that. And you know what? Honestly, I can't even say that I even knew this verse back then, even though I'm sure it was said to me a million times. But I was the kid in the back of church, talking too much and not paying attention to what the pastor had to say or the priest had to say. But as I grew older, spirituality definitely, I walked away from spirituality and the idea of God and the idea of the Bible or any sort of spirituality for a long time. But as you know, as life goes on, if you have a calling, no matter what, that calling is going to be fulfilled. And so I started coming back to spirituality about 5-7 years ago, and it's been a tremendous journey of great of learning. And I would say that at first I was very resistant to the Bible, mainly because I had negative ideas or experiences in the church. I didn't relate to it. And so I never really, gave it much thought. So I kind of started on this Buddhist path, which eventually led me to what I study today as part of the Hare Krishna movement. And I did read the Bible again, and I opened back up to it and realized that it is profoundly wise. It has tremendous amounts of value and knowledge, and it truly is spoken. Most of it, or some of it, I should say, is truly spoken from a space of love. So when I read that verse, I hear it. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. And it really speaks to what love really is from what I've learned in other traditions. So it's interesting that I feel like I was joking because I have my little Jesus next to me. And I was joking about the fact that, and I'm joking, but this is the actual fact, is that I feel closer to Jesus now by studying other spiritual practices than I felt coming up through the church. And I just think that's funny because I feel so close to what Christ consciousness means, what Jesus was showing us, and the mass amounts of power that he had and what he created. Now, this specific verse is interesting because it also challenges our material belief of love. So love is often used very whimsically in today's world. I love my coffee. I love my jeans. I love my office. I love my home. I love my mom. I love God. Well, those are all different emotions. I mean, if you say, I love my coffee, and that's how we tend to use the word love in our society. We describe it to anything. Oh, I love this coffee. I love this television show. I love my mom. But the way you feel about your mother and the way that you feel about the television show, at least I'm assuming, aren't the same. I'm assuming that the love of your mother is at a way deeper level than the love of the television show. But because we use the word love so whimsically, we have also as a society diminished its meaning. Nobody knows what love is anymore.
Nope.
Because what love is for most people is jealousy. If I love him or I love her, so I can't let them go. Well, sorry, but that's not love as described in this chapter of Corinthians, right? That is actually comes from a very material type of perspective. So I think that this verse is super important for us all, no matter what tradition it is that you may be studying, or no tradition at all, or even if you're atheist, this still has the definition of love that I believe to be the real definition of love. And it is not a romantic type of love. It is not a gushy kind of love of like, what you see in the movies. No, it's a very quiet type of love. And I believe that this love to be the truest love that exists in our universe. And I believe also that it is our job in ourselves to discipline ourselves. And the word disciple comes from the word discipline. So when someone says, I'm a disciple or follower of Jesus, or I'm a disciple of whoever, what they're really saying is I've taken upon a discipline so that I can discipline myself and mainly my ego and senses, my body, so that I can understand who I truly am, which is spirit, an infinite spark of the divine, which is love. And love is perfectly described in this verse, from my opinion. What are your thoughts on the verse, Emily?
Yeah, I love when you talked about this not being a romantic kind of love. Let's throw romance and that idea out of it, because that's another area where our minds have been falsely programmed into what love is. Like we're talking about, I love my coffee and I'm a TV show. When we think of love, we automatically move to the romantic love and our romantic relationships in our life. But what it really comes down to for me, Nick, is self-love and how you feel about yourself and creating this in your life. And self-love tends to be something that is so overrated too. It's just like, we're so tired of hearing about love yourself first so that you can love other people. I know that when I'm doing readings for my clients, I'll come in, and the way it goes is we'll get into the meditative space and I open the Akashic Records. And then I sit in their energy for just a second, because, I'm moving out of my own energy field into their high vibrating Akashic Record energy. It takes a moment of acclimation. And I always give myself that moment to sit in their energy and take a look around at what I see. And spirit will show me colors first and foremost on that person. An energetic vibration is represented by the color emanating from them. And I cannot tell you how many times the magenta pink energy comes up. That's that heart energy. It's always a signal that person needs to dive into what self-love really is. I also teach anybody who comes to work with me to learn the Akashic Records, to learn about these higher levels of consciousness, that the gateway to understanding this stuff is through the heart space. It totally depends on how much you love yourself. It does not depend on how smart you are, how much of this cosmic wisdom you can process and assimilate. It has to do with how much you love yourself. And that's why I'm loving this verse so much today, because this really describes how we should feel about ourselves and other people in our life at every single moment. And when self-love comes up, I'll generally share it with the client. And I can't tell you, 99% of the time, the feedback is, oh, well, I thought I was doing pretty good on loving myself. Like, I'm trying to, take my salt baths and giving myself time to go get a manicure. No, it means that's a good start, But it's so much more than that. Are you patient with yourself? Are you being truly kind to yourself? Are you in that space where you're not boastful? Is it easy for you to forget and release where you feel like people have wronged you? I mean, I can tell you that I've gotten so good at forgetting issues that come up that stir me up and that bother me. And sometimes people remind me, or a friend will remind me, and I can't even remember the situation that they're talking about. So I recognize in hearing this verse again today how far I'm really coming on my own self-love. I'd love to hear the verse again. Will you read it again, Nick, for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe what we can do, Emily, is I can read just a few lines from it. Let's talk and break it down, even line by line.
Let's do it.
So we'll go because it's verses 4 to 8. So we'll break it down. We'll just so 4 is love is patient, love is kind. Love, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud.
I got surges of energy just moving through my body right now. Almost it's moving me to emotional state, I have to say. Wow, that's brilliant. I'm a little lost first.
Yeah. That's fine. And you know what? Love actually does that to you.
Yeah.
Love will take you out of words, because words are material. Words are often very distorted. You know, one thing that you may see as you grow more spiritually is you'll have less to say. I mean, take Jesus in the Bible. Jesus didn't say much because life is so simple. Love is so simple. It's our egos that make it so complicated, that make life so stressful and full of worries and anxieties, and what about this and what about that? And often all of these plans that we have are plans to satisfy the ego, rather than seeing that love is already satisfied in itself. That's why there's no need to boast, and there's no need to envy, and there's no need to be proud, because it's satisfied. When we're boastful, what we're saying is, somebody acknowledge me. But love doesn't need acknowledgement. It says right in the next verse, it does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking, meaning it is not seeking others to acknowledge it. Look at me. Look how spiritual I am. Look, I'm bathing in salt. I'm waving sage around. I've got this and that. I wear the dashiki. I'm just joking. I don't know, whatever it is, right? right? You know, I kind of joke about that, right? Like, I'm wearing the spiritual clothes. Look how spiritual I am. But most of that spiritual stuff is actually ego trying to get attention, so someone validates how spiritual you are. And I'm talking from personal experience. I don't know if you guys are familiar with J.P. Sears.
Yeah.
J.P. Sears is a funny guy, and he's got millions of followers, and he's very, very wise. Well, I had J.P. Sears on my Google Hangout show a number of years ago. And before we got started on the show, and this was when I was really starting to learn about my studies, I kept mentioning that how I was studying Bhagavad Gita and how I was doing this. And he called me out gently on it and said, yeah, you know, it's like how you have to mention you've done this to show everybody you've got spiritual cred. And I so appreciate that, because what he brought to my awareness is how much I still wanted validation from others that I was on a spiritual journey. And so it's okay if you're there. But I also want you, what J.P. Sears did for me, I would like to do for you and call you out and say, are you seeking attention for your spirituality? Now, my spiritual master inside of the Hare Krishna movement, Srila Prabhupada, said, you should never make a show of your spiritual knowledge, meaning share it. Like, you may think, well, aren't you guys making a show of it right now? Yeah, we're sharing it, but we're not trying to, but you're willfully listening. Nobody here is listening to us by force, right? You are willfully listening. So there's a difference between teaching somebody who is willing to listen than to say, look at me, I'm doing this and I'm trying to get credit for it. So your spirituality or love, which is what spirituality is all about. It's all about getting back to love, getting back to the essence, to the grace of who you are. And so to do that, we have to create a discipline to not dishonor others, not to be self-seeking. And it says it is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. And I think this is what you were mentioning, Emily, of like, how good are you? Do you know, last year you called me a name and I'm still holding that against you or upset. And, you know, love doesn't even remember that. Love, real love, oh yeah, you call, oh, whatever, you know, it's moved on. And I think this is powerful. This verse is extremely powerful, not only when you just analyze it philosophically like what we're doing, but you embody its message. You really begin to live what it is saying.
And I like when you talked about discipline before, Nick, and becoming a disciple of, just become a disciple of this verse. It requires a practice. So this for me is where meditation comes in and is so helpful, because our minds are programmed. Okay, the brain runs on the apps, whatever app you have downloaded, and in order to get some new thoughts running in here, you're finding, oh my gosh, it's hard for me to release grudges. Like I forgive, but I don't forget. If you're finding yourself being one of those folks, if you're finding yourself, well, yeah, I do love myself, but I do like compare myself to my friends, and I do feel envious when things happen. If you're still finding remnants inside of yourself where you're not fully in alignment with the love, that's where discipline comes in. That's where meditation, in order to shift what's going on in the thought patterns in the brain, is so important. So you can't just hear a verse like this and think, okay, I'm going to start making some changes in my life. It's like trying to stick to a diet and your body still has those intense cravings for sugar and for caffeine and for the old things that it was running on. It's really important that a discipline meets a verse like this so that we can really move towards attaining the full vibration of what exists here within this, when we really love ourselves, when we really love other people. But like you talked about in the beginning of this conversation, we're using love to love our coffee. We're using love to love our TV shows. That programming has to be calmed down inside of the mind, because I promise you, it's ingrained. When you think, first of all, if I love my coffee, there's a neuron synapses that fires off here, and then it starts down the line, the path that it's formed in your head. And it's almost like once you have one thought in your mind, it's entangled with so many other thoughts that you're going to move down the chain of thinking and realize very quickly that your thoughts have taken over you, and now you're 5 thoughts down the way, and you don't realize that you've been programmed to be right where you are, to keep thinking the same things, to keep doing the same behaviors. So if you want to change what's going on inside of the mind, how the mind is controlling you, it's very important that you bring in a discipline like meditation, where you can quiet the mind and really return to the heart space. That's another big issue that I'm finding with people in general in this society, is the mind is doing most of the controlling. The mind is processing how we're interacting on the planet. When we are truly spiritually aligned, the mind is a servant of the heart. And in order to put the mind back in its place, that discipline is required of purposely calming down all of those thoughts that are taking off and running inside of our mind. So for me, the idea of bringing in that meditation and discipline is a must if you want to truly attain what is given to us in all, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Tao Te Ching, whether it's the Vedic knowledges, the Bhagavad Gita. How did I do on pronouncing that, Nick? Medium?
You did good. You did good.
The discipline is required in order to really, really get in touch with what these knowledges are that are coming forward for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we have to understand that it is our human body that our soul has incarnated into this human body to learn some things. And the thing that it is here to learn as a human being is love. We can return the human being, the human form is a gateway to love. It is a gateway to the higher realms or the celestial planets and knowledge. The animals necessarily don't have that gateway yet. They have, their spirit needs to evolve into a gateway. The human body is the gateway. So we should not, in my opinion, waste our human life doing animal things, right? And creating the same circumstances that the animals do. We are supposed to evolve beyond that. So namely, 4 activities of the animal consciousness are eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Now, you're going to do these things. You're going to eat, but you should discipline your eating. Eat only to sustain your life. Stop eating for pleasure. Stop eating, overeating, right? Because overeating takes our energy into a lower vibration, and now you can't hold that space of love or non-judgment because you're craving. And when you're in craving, you are always going to be agitated, which takes you away from love. It's a lower vibration. Sleeping. Start to discipline your sleeping. Stop oversleeping, right? People who are, first of all, if you eat too much, you'll sleep too much. This is correlated. You're eating. Also, if you eat too much, you'll have more dreams, and you will also be more agitated in your sleep. So the more you discipline your eating, your sleep will naturally begin to regulate, and you'll see that you begin to need less sleep, right? Now, this is not going to happen overnight, but as you discipline yourself in these, you know, in Bhagavad Gita, for instance, it says that we should only be sleeping 6 hours a day. If we're sleeping more than 6 hours a day, we're falling into the modes of ignorance, lower vibrations. Then begin to defend it. Well, the whole world is defending. Now, some of us are defending violently, and we're still fighting. And we see this on the streets. We see the fascist movement growing within the world, who's defending supremacy. They're defending one culture against another culture. We must be very, very careful of this movement. We see people are defending, though, in their own marriages. I'm right, you're wrong. This is the way we're going to do it. We're not going to do it that way. This is all a form of defending, having to defend your ego. The ego always wants to defend itself because its nature is to feel separate. So how do you feel separate? You have to defend. So you want to first discipline your eating to start to regulate your body, which naturally begins to discipline your sleeping, which then you want to work on your defending. Stop defending yourself. Stop defending your spiritual growth. Just grow spiritually in silence. Stop being boastful about it. Stop expecting everybody to come down the journey with you. You don't know what their spirit needs. You are not God, so therefore you should not dictate whether their spirit is ready to evolve. Maybe their spirit needs to be where they're at for their evolution. And remember, love is patient. Love is kind. So be patient and be kind. Don't tell somebody they need to be where you're at. No, they don't. If they needed to be where you were at, then they would be where they're at. They are where they are, and let them be. You do you. Mind your own business, right? You know, because again, love is patient. Love is not self-seeking. Stop seeking for somebody to say, yes, you are so masterful. You are so spiritual. You are so evolved. Wow. This is not love. This is still part of the evolution of the body. So as you begin to discipline, then you also want to begin to regulate your sex life as well. Meaning you can have sex, but do it with one person, right? Stop watching porn, first of all, if that's something that you're doing, because porn is a big destruction in our society. It's very addictive, and it totally takes people away from the reality of love in sexual relationships. It totally just dehumanizes it, and it totally takes away from the essence of it. And begin to regulate with no illicit sex, meaning have a partner, enjoy them, and even bring God into that relationship, right? And you'll even see that your sex life may bring deeper meaning to it than just, you know, sort of a way to just relieve your sexual energy. So bring in some discipline to these 4 areas of life, which are the animal consciousness activities. Because what do animals do? They eat, they sleep, right? They mate, and they defend, and that's about it. And that's pretty much animal life. They survive. They're just on the survival level. Well, as a human being, start to explore the humanness, which is loving, which is creative, which so you can create businesses, you can create organizations, art, music, sing, dancing. There's so many forms of creation that can happen. Self-expression, attainment of knowledge. This is all the human activities, which brings you into higher vibrational frequencies, which gets you closer to love. Now, let's continue on the verse where it says, so this is 6, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. I like that line.
Yep, that's good stuff right there.
Yeah, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Now, from my perspective, what is evil? Evil is anything that takes you away from truth. Mm-hmm. Evil is anything like sin. You know, people say, oh, I'm a sinner. Well, we're all sinners. You know, just you know, in that respect, just respect that you are not, you, me, we all have sin. But what is sin? It is anything that it goes against the divine plan. So sin is anything that is not love. Right? Anything that is not patient, kind, yeah. You know, and everything that's describing. So when it says that, so when the verse says, love does not delight in evil, it is saying that it is that if you are in a space of love, you will never indulge in evil. So you'll never indulge in, let's say, gossip, because gossip isn't evil, is out of the divine love. So when you're delighting in things that are outside of love, you're coming from your ego, which wants to feel important and wants to self-indulge and be separate, because it has this thing about I am important and I am special and all this stuff. But love is opposite of that. So we can see that when we're in a space of love, I mean, my spiritual master, Bhakti Maharaj Swami, he's so humble. And I really realize it's because over his discipline, it's just that the practice for him has just gotten to a space where he doesn't have to boast about anything. And I realized that's why people love hanging around with him. He's just so humble.
Yeah, I had an experience with that this summer when my oldest son, who's an incredible baseball player, got in my description of how things went down. He got bumped from the team in a very undermining kind of way, and I didn't realize that he was getting bumped from the team. He didn't realize he was getting bumped from the team. And when we came back and he was not injured anymore, he was ready to play, that's when the coach finally came clean and told me, oh no, he's not on the team anymore. Once he went off for the injury, we're not letting him back on. And I was really angry, and the team started to do better and better and advance more and more. And I found myself struggling with that idea of rejoicing in evil. When that team finally got kicked out of the tournament and they weren't moving on to the Little League World Series, there was a part of me that was totally rejoicing, because I don't know how I would have handled it when my kid was supposed to be on that team, in my opinion, and he wasn't. And he would have missed this opportunity. And I knew in my heart that I should not be rejoicing, because those kids were bummed out. The coaches were bummed out. People had worked hard to get where they were. But there was a part of me that really was like, I felt relieved, and I felt a little bit happy that my kid wasn't missing out now because the team had been kicked out. And I really had to call myself, hold myself accountable for that, because I recognized that I was feeling it, and that it wasn't necessarily in alignment with who I really want to be, with who I really am at the core. So that was an interesting opportunity for me to see the places in my own life where I was rejoicing in evil, and learning to recognize it and see it for what it is, and to realize, oh, this is a place where I'm not in alignment. So then what do I do? What do I do about it when I recognize that I'm not in alignment? When I'm a sinner, what happens when I'm a sinner, Nick, and I gotta find my way back to God?
That's right. And you know what? That's where love comes in again. We're all going to stray off the path, right? That's why these masters have come, and like Jesus has come and shown us the way. And so when we do stray off the path, then we need to move forward. And this is why, at least in the tradition that I come from, they say it is so important to take to a spiritual master, because the spiritual master protects you from the path. It's like why you take to a coach, or you take to a guru, or you take to some master, because to think that you will just by self will go the whole way, most likely you won't. Just well, you'll spend many lives then doing it. You'll have to suffer a lot. But if you take to a spiritual master and take to the path, so for instance, those who devote themselves to the teachings of Jesus, Jesus is the path, the light, and the way for his followers. So those who take to his path and follow in his footsteps, they too achieve the kingdom. And so there's spiritual masters have come onto the planet to say the same thing. Look, if you walk in my footsteps, you too will achieve the kingdom. But you have to take all of it, and you have to control yourself and bring self-discipline in to really attain this type of love. Now, look, we're coming to the end of today's podcast, so I'm just going to read the rest of the verse, and then we'll wrap up today. So it says, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. What do you think the end of that means, Emily?
Oh, the part about where there is knowledge, it will pass away?
Yeah, where there's prophecies, they will cease. Where there is tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away.
I was just thinking and trying to absorb it, to be honest with you. I feel like it's one of those things where time will tell. Like if you're still, the truth eventually emerges. So if there are prophecies, there are always doomsday prophecies. We've got one coming up right now about September 23rd. For me, like if you stay in that zone of stillness and connection, all of the things that are not true, they're not in alignment, will tend to pass over. You don't have to jump in and like wrestle with those things emotionally or subconsciously. Where there are tongues, they will cease. Anyone who's talking out of turn, who's blah, blah, they're mumbo jumbo, all of that ceases. The wisdom part is the one that I don't have an answer for yet. I'm sitting with that. Do you have an answer for that one, where there's wisdom, there will cease? Because wisdom for me is something that I hold in really high regard, and very, it's very much on a pedestal for me in my life. Wisdom, the idea of seeking wisdom. And so when I hear that, I'm like, wait a second, wisdom shall pass away? No, wait, I want the wisdom. Yeah. I don't know about that one. Help me out, Nick.
Yeah. It actually uses the word knowledge. And I think there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom means sort of an inner knowingness. Okay, so most knowledge that we have is material knowledge. And we think that what we've done as a society is we've said that material knowledge, this person's smart because they can have they're a doctor.
Right.
So they're smart. So they're elevated as a smart person. But I know doctors, many doctors, and their lives aren't very nice. They work a lot. They don't have many friends. They're very isolated. I'm not saying all doctors. I'm just giving it as an example. So when it says the knowledge will pass away, what I believe it's referring to is material knowledge. You'll actually notice that, for instance, Jesus was a very simple person. My spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, he always used to say, I don't know, I'm not an expert in these things. I remember there's one video of they were asking him how they wanted to record him doing his chanting. And he said, sure, you can record it. And so they were asking him the details of it. Like, do you want us to do it this way and that way? And he just looked up and was just like, oh, I don't know. I'm not an expert. Do it however you want. Like, I have no idea, right? Like, and to me, that's an embodiment of that teaching. Knowledge will pass away, meaning you'll no longer want to attain material knowledge. You'll no longer think that knowing a lot from a material standpoint means anything. But so knowledge will pass away, meaning you will unlearn all the knowledge that you think is helping you. It will pass away. You will begin to unlearn the programmings of the society and the culture and the religion and all of this stuff that keeps you in this box and unhappy and suffering, that will begin to pass away. Meaning that knowledge that you hold in your mind, that you believe is helping you, it will begin to pass, because wisdom will actually grow, which means you get to see the simplicity of life, the simplicity of love. And when you simplify your life, you naturally become more loving. Loving and simplicity are going to go hand in hand, and life is going to flourish for you.
Yeah, I get it.
And so I believe that's what it means.
That makes sense. I like that. That's what I would call, from my metaphysical standpoint, is unplugging from the matrix. Like, the matrix is the societal paradigm of belief that exists around us, the tribal norms that we all go along with. And really, to be free, it's important that we unplug from those. So I get it. I get it now. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah. Awesome. You're welcome. So guys, that comes to the end of our podcast. Thank you so much. Leave your comments about what your discussions are, what you got from it. Definitely subscribe to our iTunes, and make sure that you go back and listen to some of our other podcasts, especially if you enjoyed this conversation. And find us at Facebook at the Akashic Academy, and follow us on Facebook so you can dive more into these conversations with us and learn more about the Akashic Academy and how we are here helping to bring spiritual practices together to unify our search for God. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you on the next episode.
And cut. Awesome.
All right, fantastic. So thank you for everybody for watching us on Facebook. What we're going to do now is we're going to go back and read some of your comments and just spend a few minutes acknowledging you. So what you were listening to, just in case you didn't understand, is you were listening to the behind-the-scenes recording of our podcast, which, Emily, if you want to hold up your sign there, the Akashic Podcast, you can go onto iTunes. And we would actually really appreciate, if you're enjoying these discussions, that you go onto iTunes and you leave us a review, because it helps us to get found even more. And, you know, if you believe that these discussions are important for others to hear about, then help us by getting found by leaving us a review on our iTunes channel, you subscribing to it, downloading our different podcasts, and take a listen to some of the other discussions that we've got going on. We have a lot of really cool discussions happening. So I'm just going to scroll back down, and I'm just going to sort of pick a random spot and begin to acknowledge some of the comments that have come in, because there was a lot of comments that came in. So I don't know, I'm just going to pick random here. Let's go here. Bobby Joe Mark says, amen. The hypocrisy of the church is what repelled me after the years of dedication. So true about all of the, what is that image? Fantastic. Thank you so much. Bobby Joe says, this verse meaning changes for me as I grow and learn, means something totally different now than 10 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. It was funny because we were picking which verse to talk about today, and I was reading through a bunch of verses, just me and Emily, and I was just telling her as I was reading them, like, these mean so much more to me now. They have so much depth and meaning, and I can relate to them so differently than I could have ever when I was learning, the Bible in high school. Julia says, love is non-judgmental. Is not judgmental. Spirit is not judgmental. Only humans judge. Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, this is a big comment here from Justin. A true self-love is not a selfish love, a love of material thing, a love of luxury, a selfish love. True self-love is always undervalued. It is that selfish love that's overrated. As far as ego, I see it as identity and self-esteem, not overbearing. Without the ego, there would not be any individuals, and we'd all be drones without any variety. Without ego, you diminish the beauty of humanity. As for the attention, even God wishes for attention and credit for things. Everyone, even God, seek credit where credit is due. Every feeling, even the ones that are not liked, are still within our design. They would not be if it was not by design. Love is but only one of those. We are not designed to have only but one feeling, and no one feeling can survive without the other feelings. on part of our design. You destroy the design. Awesome, fantastic. Thank you for sharing this. Very, very, very wise. Suraj says, when a man or woman asks what he like, he, she say everything, and what do you hate? When answer is nothing, then you are on the right path with meditation and spirituality. Yes, fantastic. That's a very, very nice, very wise as well. Bobby Joe says, our school curriculum and TV programming teach us to listen to the thoughts they plant versus our inner voice. Yes, absolutely they do. They're designed on control. The system is designed on control. So, and control is a psychic control. It's controlling the mind through programming, school, all this type of stuff. Therefore, we do not hear, listen to our inner voice as well, just as theory. Always on point, guys. Thank you so much. Very wise. The flower does not compete with the flower next to it. It simply just grows. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I love that analogy. Thank you. Suraj, I am not a sinner, LOL. Me and you both. But this is really nice, Justin. I saw this. I didn't read it out loud while we were doing it, but I did see it, and I thought this was great. So this goes on a little further in verse 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 9. But if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. And he's talking right there. He's talking about the discipline of sexuality, right? So it is better again to marry and exercise sexuality in that marriage than to, sort of be out in the world.
Yeah, Nick, I want to share a couple things about that, and then I have to wrap up for today. But
yeah, then we're gonna go. Yeah.
A couple ideas around sexuality, because it's a big topic, right? And human beings, like, we're sexual beings, and so I know a lot of times there's that idea in marriage, like, oh, okay, you're gonna be with the same person the rest of your life. If you need something more spicy in your life, guys, start exploring the tantric and the yogic ideas of union and coming together, like when man and woman come together, or if you're a woman and a woman or a man and a man. I have no problem with whatever your sexual orientation is, but the idea of those two energies coming together, there's some really interesting and very, I would use the word erotic things that you can just I was gonna talk about sex. I'm like, oh my God, is my mom watching? Is my mother-in-law watching? But the idea of like your chakras, of exchanging breath with one another. Once you start to understand the bigger picture of what's happening when you're coming together with someone, you will obtain that level of connection and eroticism and things that you feel like you're only getting from your porn, or you're only getting from your extramarital affairs, or the spice or the passion or whatever it is that you're looking for. There's so much more, just like there's so much more to spirituality and energy, there's so much more to sexuality that we haven't really been just talked about or discussed. You go to human sexuality class when you're in the 4th or 5th grade or whatever, and you're not being taught these kind of things. Not that it's appropriate for children, but it starts at, that level of two bodies coming together, and then you don't really go much further. Even as you get older and you can handle more, unraveling of what's really going on when two souls come together, it's not really shared. So dive into that, learn about that. That's going to bring a lot more excitement to your sex life. I also want to share that because I just learned this recently, that when a person has an orgasm, there is sonic energy that's rippling through your body, rippling out into the universe. That is the creative force energy. So whatever is going on inside, underneath the layers of the desire that are on the outside, right? But in your mind, in your heart, if you're stressed out, if you're pissed at somebody, you are sending those ripples of cosmic creation out into the planet. So it's so important that you have awareness when you are with somebody. It's not just about fulfilling, like you talked about, that animalistic desire to have that orgasm and to feel like, oh, okay, now I can feel relaxed because I've got my pent up energy out. There's so much more to the story. And so if you find yourself, if you are somebody who is drawn toward pornography, I would say dive into the ideas of tantric sex, because in my opinion, if you go down that path, there's going to be as much excitement and as much fulfillment that you're getting from the porn. And it's going to take you deeper on your own spiritual journey, which is what people are really looking for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Justin left another Bible verse there for you. We don't have time to read it, but I do encourage you guys to read it and connect. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everybody, Susan, and just so many great people here. Suraj and Candy and Anna and Annie and so many people here. Bobby, Joe, and Sarah. Again, I can't name everybody just because there's Julia. Thank you guys so much for leaving all the comments and joining in this discussion. And again, visit our iTunes channel, download more of the podcast, and leave us some reviews. We'd love to know what you guys are thinking, and share this with other folks. Thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic and wonderful day wherever you are.
Bye, everybody.